Today's podcast is about overcoming the challenges that many of us retiring women face as we move into this next chapter. And my guest today is Isabel Alexander. Isabel is a globally recognized strategist and information catalyst. She is originally from Canada and built a 7-figure global chemical wholesale business from her dining room table. Named one of Canada's top 100 most influential women and the recipient of the Women of International Influence Award, Isabel has been a driving force in empowering women entrepreneurs. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Encore Catalyst, where she coaches and educates women entrepreneurs. Isabel is also the founder of the Lift As You Climb movement and podcast, guiding women through various entrepreneurial stages. Her roles include director of reinventing.com. She has authored her memoir, Where Am I Now? Feminine Wisdom, Unmasked and Uncensored, and she is a motivational speaker. Isabel's mantra, Lift As You Climb, reflects her philosophy on mutual growth and empowerment. Holding dual citizenship in Canada and the United States, she enjoys traveling and maintains a rich tapestry of personal and professional connections globally. Isabel's story is a beacon of inspiration, demonstrating how visionary leadership and strategic advising can pave the way for a better future. So please join me for my conversation with Isabel Alexander. Welcome to Retire Your Limits, the podcast for women who are ready to rewrite the rule books and redefine what it means to retire. I am your host, Gayla Beyer, nurse practitioner turned wellness coach for retiring women. Planning this next chapter of our lives can be overwhelming. At least I know it was for me. This podcast is about putting you first, challenging the norms, and unlocking what's possible for you as you step into this new era of retirement. So ready to retire your limits? Let's dive in. Hi, Isabel. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Gayla. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today.
Yes, we had quite a time getting this together, but here we are.
Yes.
I've been so excited to talk with you. As I've been growing in my own business, I will say that I have thought, wow, this woman could be my mentor, So it is an honor to have you on my podcast.
I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much for sharing your stage with me.
Yes, yeah. Well, I thought we could get to know a little bit more about you today by talking a little bit about your book.
Well, the book is called Who Am I Now? Feminine Wisdom, Unmasked and Uncensored. And I published that as a gift to myself for my 65th birthday because I wanted to share with other women the journey that I had been on. And I knew from a lot of, as they say, research, my personal surveys, that so many other baby boomer women were on as well. And that is figuring out really who are we now after a lifetime, literally decades, for, most of us 5-6 decades of being something else all the time for other people. So whether we were a daughter, a student, a wife, an employee, a mother, a career person, a business owner, a spouse. I mean, there was always a role that we were fulfilling. And then we come to this place in our lives where there's a little bit more time because some of those responsibilities are retired and we're not. As you say, we don't retire our limits. I think it just opens up the stage for us to start to go, who am I and what would I like to do? Me. And the most exciting part of having those conversations with other women was, well, first of all, the number one comment that I got from women that I met at speaking engagements and book launches and just in everyday, networking was after they read the book, they said, "Oh my God, I thought it was just me." And so that was such affirmation for me that I was on the right path, that this was a conversation that needed to be spread and the ripple effect would have such impact. And then the number two thing was like, okay, nobody gave us a manual for this time of our lives. The world is so different than it was for our mother's generation, our grandmother's generation. And holy frig, it's changing every single day, right? With technology. So as you can tell, because I didn't even breathe there, I love talking about what the book did, and that was to start conversations between women like you and me and all the others who are figuring out that the limits that perhaps we keep imposed on ourselves don't fit the woman that we have evolved to become.
Yes. Yes. How did you come about writing this book? What inspired you to write the book?
It was almost a decade of torturous self-examination, really. I had a fairly large chemical company in Canada, did business internationally, traveled the world, reached the eight-figure a year in sales mark, and then said, okay, that was fabulously interesting, but now I want something different in my life. And I sold that business. And then I went wild and crazy and I took a chance on love again. And I got married, moved to another country and tried out this woman of leisure life. Very, very privileged in my 50s to be able to do that and realized something wasn't right because what I expected to feel in having this free time, this not having to get up and bust to stay on a schedule and fit everything into X hours a day was not making me feel really happy, wasn't making me feel good about myself. And I struggled for the longest time, Gayla, honestly. I read so many books. I went to therapy. I joined groups. I paid for coaches. I researched all of this to find out what was wrong with me. And in the course of doing that, I discovered I wasn't alone either. That there were millions, literally, of baby boomers, men and women, that had spent their many, many years, like 20, 30, 40 years, but with an identity attached to a business card or a daily routine, the people that they, went to work with every day, and or the, whatever their main occupation was, their role in the life, and suddenly that's gone, and you're not prepared. I was really unprepared for the identity crisis that I experienced, and I was riddled with shame and embarrassment and frustration that why can't I figure this out? Like how difficult can this be? I've done all this other things. But it was because I was trying to apply the filters and the standards that society had, you know, preserved for a long time, that a woman of my age should be doing this, should look like this, should be satisfied with that. And that was the aha, the day I realized, wait a second. It's not 1945 anymore. It's a new day. It's a new life. It's a new possibility. I'm going to live another 20, 30, 40 years, possibly. This isn't enough. I love being a grandmother. I love entertaining my friends. I love having a nice home. I love traveling when I have the opportunity. There were lots of things, but combined collectively, they weren't enough for me to feel like I was growing and that I was giving value in the world and really important as an entrepreneur, as a person like yourself. We're building, we need to feel valued for what we're doing, the contribution that we're making. So I decided I needed to write the story.
Wow. So, when you were busy in your career, you were running this big company, and then you made this decision to retire, transition out of more of a traditional retirement where you were going to be traveling and being with your family. Did you have some sense of self awareness about what you wanted for you personally during that time?
I can tell you that I wasn't that smart or prepared or aware in the beginning because I was still very much operating on the paradigms that I expected. I grew up in Canada, and so the commercials, the marketing messages that we received were called Freedom 55. And I'm sure that every every in place in the Western world has some similar message about that we're all working to that gold watch moment. And then, I don't know, we're supposed to hear harp music and just smile all the time, right? And so for the first while, that's why I beat up on myself badly. That what's wrong with you? You have a privileged life. You don't have to go to work. You can loll around in your PJs and eat bonbons if you want. And so the more that I struggled against that script that I thought I was supposed to be fulfilling to be considered successful, good enough, the more unhappy I became. I had health issues. I had relationship issues. I mean, everything was a shit show because I didn't realize I was just having this whole internal warfare with who I am now until it finally slowly began to sink in that I was still trying to live my present and future life based on the script of a past life, and worse, based on the paradigm or the limits that were established by someone else.
Yes, yes. And I think it can be complicated because there are women who do the traditional retirement path and are perfectly happy. They're just in heaven. And so sometimes you feel like you should be living your retirement like that. And then that even makes the internal feeling lost and feeling like something's missing and feeling that guilt of not being satisfied, even though you have everything you ever dreamed for. It just makes it like twice as bad.
Well, and you touched on the real magic of realizing this. We are all different. We have all accumulated our own vault of lifetime skills and tacit knowledge and experience and relationships. So we each are evolving at a different rate, and we have different interests. And so to just go carte blanche, okay, as soon as you are finished your day job, this is what's supposed to be enough for you. You know, it's like opening one of those boxes of a cake mix and all the ingredients are in there and it's supposed to be wonderful. Well, I mean, that can't possibly be true. But somehow I wasn't smart enough to go in the minute, wait a second. I'm probably gonna go through some processing of, okay, who am I now? What do I want next? Uh, oh no, I'm not probably going to fit into the life my mother or my grandmother would have lived. Uh, and as a woman, to get to that stage of saying it is not only okay to say, I want what I want, it's absolutely necessary because, we're that butterfly, right? when you leave your job, relationship, interest, whatever, there's always that metamorphosis period where you are the goo. You are that caterpillar that has turned into that mushiness, and it's uncomfortable. It's kind of ugly, right? And then one wonderful day, if you allow the process, the evolutionary process to take place emotionally, mentally, you have to do some physical work too. Then you become the butterfly that okay, now these are my new wings. And maybe this time remember, oh, but that's not who we have to be forever.
Yes. So, some really powerful and important things that I've just heard you say. One is that we are all different. All of us women in this age, we all didn't choose the same type of work, right? We all had different careers, different jobs, stay at home moms. So, why we all think we should all fit into some sort of a box in our retirement is confusing to me. I do notice there seems to be some conflict, though. If women choose to have an encore career, which I know that you help women to move into that direction, that women who are actually retired and not working anymore, then there seems to be some conflict there. Have you experienced any type of a conflict?
The only time that I can say that I could really say that I experience conflict is when one of us tries to apply what we think is right to somebody else.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
um, and so, I mean, I try to run as far away from that as I possibly
yeah,
can,
yeah.
because as my dear former mother-in-law used to say, if we were all the same color of wallpaper, how boring would the world be? So, for me, what excites me is the diversity of people and interests and careers. And like I said, I think we grossly underestimate how much is in our lifetime vault. The
Yes.
experiences, our own strengths, our background, our traditions, the things that went wrong in our life added to the richness of our personality, our character today. The things that we said, I always wanted to, but never could make the time or got around to that. And so I'm just so excited about when I see women today and men. I mean, this is not exclusive to one sex or the other, but I think as women, thank God, we tend to want to be a little more open about it, a little more honest. Not everybody, but that we have learned that in talking candidly, sharing our truth with each other, that we lift each other, which is, sort of part of the background of my podcast, which is called Lift as You Climb, that as we become the best version of ourselves over and over and over again, we are then able to empower others to do the same. And so if there are conflicts out there about people saying, well, you should, I would find a new group to hang with.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
the other really important thing that you said that, I wanted to touch on was just I just remember when I was in my early 20s and I was talking with my friends, and we were just out of college, and we were all thinking about our careers and how we felt like we were pioneers at that time. Because most of our moms, had maybe been stay-at-home moms, or because that was the role that they played at that time. We felt like we were pioneers, that we were on the brink of something big, where women were moving into the workforce and they were raising their children while working, and they were doing all of these things. And I get the same feeling now as we're moving into retirement, that we are pioneers because we're the first generation of career-oriented women who are now moving into this next chapter of our lives. And there isn't a roadmap for us.
I am thrilled by what you're opening up here for consideration because you are right. We've been on the leading edge of creating the model, and we still are. So I'm 69 years old, and I have now, I think, a greater excitement about discovering what else I am capable of, what else I choose to do. And maybe I think I'm more excited because earlier in my life, I went along doing what I thought I was supposed to do, because there was this kind of prescribed track for us, right? Like, go to school, get a job, get married, have children, until you get to that golden retirement day. We're now, as you say, we've just retired the limits on that thinking. Anything is possible. Technology, which intimidates us sometimes, and many people, has just opened up the world for us. And if you employ it to help you, it dramatically increases your opportunities. I just drove 2,500 miles by myself last week, diagonally across the continent. I would never have done that 20 years ago, even though I would have been younger and have more stamina, but because I hate reading maps. Absolutely can't. You could turn it any which way. I go fuzzy-eyed. But now I just put an address in my GPS and away I went. So, yay.
Yeah.
Excited for
Yeah, the technology has opened up. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be speaking now and sharing this with all sorts of other women who are feeling lost and feeling like something's missing in their lives and feeling like they're alone and like they should be feeling differently. If it wasn't for this technology, but I will tell you, it is quite a learning curve to learn all of this new technology.
And you know it, and I know it. I mean, we didn't say it was easy. And sometimes it just makes you feel silly. Sometimes it makes you feel frustrated. But the fact is that we continue to keep moving forward and trying and helping each other is what this is all about. I'm curious. You just made me think about something, Gayla. Did we have anything such as a podcast 20 years ago? Was that even a word in our vocabulary?
No.
So look how the limits of communicating with each other, sharing with each other have changed so much. And it's only going to continue to change more. And I believe in positive ways if we decide how to embrace that and work with it. And this is amazing to think, wow, not even a full generation before us. They were alone. They were isolated. They weren't doing podcasts. They weren't doing YouTube videos. They weren't Instagramming or Facebooking. Very few women were publishing books.
Yeah.
But I think in that case, most of them were probably fairly well-known celebrities that had publishing houses and editors. And now, we can write our own story, literally.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I believe, I'm so excited. The limits are just pushed way out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, two-part question. For women who are working, they're still in their career. They may even be thinking about it as a transition is on the horizon here. How do you recommend that they discover who they are now, what they're passionate about, so that they don't have to end up feeling lost and feeling like something's missing and going through what you went through?
Yeah. By doing what we are doing, we're talking to each other. We're creating smaller communities of conversation. If you're not ready yet, there's lots of podcasts you can listen to, a sample to see do you relate? Because we all have different flavors and we all have different tastes. But I would really wish for every single person to find a tribe, a group that would support them to start to become very aware of how incredible they are already. Because I don't know, societally, traditionally, how you were raised, but for me, the meek shall inherit the earth. It's not nice to expect a compliment. You're vain, all that stuff. It was like we weren't supposed to think too much of ourselves. We were only supposed to think of other people. And I am now wanting to turn that around and have each of us look in the mirror and go, hey, you're pretty cool. I think I like you. And to then start to find the ways to get to know yourself better. And whether that's listening to podcasts or meditating or belonging to a group, one of the ways that I have accomplished what I have or gone through this next reinvention for me over and over again has been by belonging to a group. So masterminds, coaches, like-minded people. And I always try to find a group or an individual who's a higher up the ladder than I am, because then I can look up to them and I can learn from them. And so I recommend that very much that's a shift in thinking for many, many women, because again, we were always putting ourselves in the background and thinking, well, how can I help you? What can I do for you? What do you need? This is a shift in thinking about, it's not like we're thrown out of the back door, everybody that we care about, but starting to make more and more quality time for ourselves. There's fabulous books to read. There's amazing women that are out there inspiring. Hallelujah. Hollywood's finally getting it and putting more representation of our generation in leading roles in films. And try some things that you've been thinking about. Like
I love that. I love the idea of finding your tribe, finding your community as a way to enhance your own self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because it is true. When you're around other people, you learn more about yourself. As long as you're not just completely focused on the other people, right? As long as you're looking in the mirror and saying, hey, you, like you just said,
I really believe that you can be intentional about your own development and growth and support at the same time as being collaborative and generous and still a good person. It doesn't mean taking care of yourself, thinking about yourself, wanting to be the next best version of yourself doesn't mean that you are a negative selfish. In fact, the better you get, the more you've got to give and to share. So I love that. And you don't have to be like anybody else. You should just
Absolutely. So the main kind of key things that I got out of that is to go ahead and take a look in the mirror and focus inward, look at yourself, be introspective, and then find a tribe, find other women who are supportive and connect with you. And then the third thing is to educate yourself, to listen to podcasts and to watch movies and just really get inspired by other women who are doing the same thing or maybe just a little bit ahead of where you would like to be, so that you have a mentor or a role model to help guide you. So would you say for women who are already retired, maybe they downsized, they did all the things that they had planned to do, and now they're just feeling kind of lost and maybe a little bit bored and disappointed and like something is missing. How would you help those women to rediscover themselves? They're in a bit of a different place.
I would love to share something with your audience, Gayla. If you're willing, I can give you a link to it.
Yes.
a tool that I created for myself for exactly that reason, because I was floundering around trying to figure that out. And I was feeling like I was starting from scratch. I felt like I was starting all over. And that seemed overwhelming and daunting to me. And so over time, I developed this tool, which sort of helped me to bring together my lifetime vault of what were my talents, what were my strengths, what were my accomplishments, what are the resources that I have, who are the incredible people in my life that I value and trust and look up to. And it's a journal exercise. It's something I could just send you the link and people can download it, because there is nothing more inspiring than you. But we forget until we take stock. And this is something that I do still to this day when I'm having a tough time or I've gone through a big change, is I just give myself a little time out and I take stock again.
I love that. Because I think that that's great to have a guide to help process through some of the confusion that happens when things don't necessarily turn out like you thought they would, you know?
For me, the thing that was, like I said, it was that whole idea of, oh my God, I'm starting from scratch. Like I've got to reinvent, I've got to create this new person. I've got to figure out my identity, all that stuff, is to really reassure yourself, you are not starting from scratch. You're building on the foundation that you have accumulated over your life. And so, recording those things, we're not talking about how many dollars you have in your bank account, but we're talking about life skills, accomplishments, events, celebrations, even trials and tribulations that have given us the abilities and the experience and the wisdom to go forward. In the book that you referred to, Who Am I Now? There's a chapter I wrote, which it was a little tongue in cheek. And I think, it always makes me giggle when I read it over, where I am talking to myself and Morgan Freeman about, I've never been that me before. So I think you can kind of guess it fits into our conversation, is that every single time that we have changed something in our life, our career, our relationships, where we live, we are reinventing ourselves. And every single time we didn't know how to do it because we'd never been that me before. So if you had the book, I think the chapter is called "I've Never Been That Me Before," and it's kind of a fun way to look at what I've just told you about. And I also, of course, will share the link to the vault.
Yes, that's great. Yeah. So to circle back and finish up our conversation today, since you have released your book, tell me about what that has been like to share your story with other women.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm an entirely new person in 4 years. I mean, so much has changed since I published the book on my 65th that I plan to update and re-release it for my 70th.
Right.
Well, these are the things, right? I want to do this because I have learned so much in that time about removing my own limits.
May I make a recommendation that you do an audio version?
And that you spoke to my heart, because I'm all about Audible books. So yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but I wanted.
No, thank you for affirming that, because that is a big commitment to do that. But I feel it's a necessary thing, because our lives are busy and full, and being able to listen to a book, as I did on that long, long road trip, is very important. I want to give that option to anybody else who, by listening to my story and the examples I share with other women like you, like me, if that gives them a leg up, then that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Isabel, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Anything else that you can think of that we didn't touch on that would be important to say around this topic of figuring out who we are now?
I think you've done really an amazing job, Gayla, of asking questions that stimulated a conversation. I just say, please continue to do what you're doing, and for your audience to reach out and ask you to address topics or questions that they have, and maybe suggest some other examples, and to share, because
Yes.
I'm all about the awards, right? To share their encore experiences and how they went from, that version of them to the next best version of themselves and so on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Isabel.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you somewhere soon. I hope when. Okay.
Bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Isabel Alexander. I would love to hear your own personal encore experiences or any insights that today's episode may have ignited in you. I hope you have a happy holiday if you celebrate, and I'll see you after the new year.